Welcome to VoicePrint's headline news for Wednesday, September 29th, 2010. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll present the top stories of the day from the world's leading newspapers. Coming up on headline news, Karzai forms peace council to reach out to Taliban. European terror attack plan thwarted. And North Korean leader picks son as likely successor. Your volunteer reader today is Nick Logan. Our first article of the day comes from the Tuesday, September 28th edition of the London Guardian. It's written by Mark Tran and has the headline, Hamid Karzai calls for reconciliation as Afghan Peace Council named. The Afghan President Hamid Karzai today appealed for reconciliation as he named some of the members of a peace council that will try to reach out to the Taliban. Karzai wept as he called on Afghans to come to their senses and move quickly towards peace, or risk seeing the next generation flee abroad and lose their Afghan identity. I do not want Mirwais, my son, to be a foreigner. I do not want this. I want Mirwais to be Afghan, he said at an International Literacy Day event at the Amani High School in Kabul. Therefore, come to your senses. You are witnessing what is happening on our soil, and only through our efforts can our homeland be ours. The president spent many years in exile in Pakistan during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s and during the later Taliban rule. His show of emotion came as the Afghan government announced the appointment of almost 70 people to a new High Peace Council, formalizing the attempts already underway to reconcile with key Taliban leaders. Wahid Omar, an Afghan presidential spokesman, said the council will guide contacts with Taliban leaders who have got in touch with leading government officials either directly or through back channels. In the past, there have been no negotiations between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Only there were some contacts and some signs from both sides, Omar said. Any future contacts, talks, or negotiations would be handled through the Peace Council, he added. The body includes 2 former presidents and at least 2 ex-Taliban officials, as well as clerics and women. Its members were agreed after talks with tribal chiefs and power brokers, some of whom sided with the U.S. in the toppling of the Taliban. The Afghan government said it would reconcile with those who renounced violence, embraced the Afghan constitution, and severed links with terrorists. General David Petraeus, the NATO commander in Afghanistan, said yesterday that high echelons of the Taliban had approached the Afghan government about peace talks. Although there have been contacts at various levels between Karzai's government and the Taliban for several months, Petraeus' comments revealed for the first time that they had been at a senior level. There are very high-level Taliban leaders who have sought to reach out to the highest levels of the Afghan government, and they have done that, he said. Karzai has made repeated efforts to reconcile with members of the Taliban, calling them brothers or dear Talibs, and asking that their leaders be removed from a UN sanctions list. He has been criticized by some political allies, including ethnic minorities and women's groups, who fear a new wave of repression if the Taliban is allowed to share power. U.S. military commanders, however, have backed his efforts, saying they reflected a similar approach to dealing with Sunni insurgents in Iraq. In June, Karzai summoned a peace yurga, or traditional gathering of tribal and community leaders, which accepted his proposal to form a council to seek peace. But the Taliban rebuffed the idea of talks, saying all foreign forces must leave Afghanistan. Karzai's peace plan involves luring foot soldiers away from the battlefield with cash and job incentives, while seeking reconciliation with senior militia leaders by offering them asylum in Muslim countries and striking their names off the UN blacklist. Donor nations, most of them Western countries, have pledged to provide tens of millions of dollars to help lure away Taliban fighters. This year has been the bloodiest since 2001, when U.S.-led forces overthrew the Taliban in the weeks after the September 11 attacks on the U.S. The conflict is turning into a political liability for the U.S. President Barack Obama, who wants to start withdrawing U.S. troops from next July if conditions allow. In the latest violence, police said a suicide bomber killed a deputy provincial governor and 5 others in eastern Afghanistan. The bomber rammed a motorized rickshaw loaded with explosives into one of 2 vehicles in a convoy, taking Deputy Governor Kazim Aliyar to his office in Ghazni City. Police said Aliyar's adult son, a nephew, a bodyguard, and 2 civilians were also killed, and a number of others were injured. This was an article titled, Hamid Karzai calls for reconciliation as Afghan Peace Council named. It was written by Mark Tran for the London Guardian, and it was published in the Tuesday, September 28th edition. Our second headline for the day is Mumbai-style terror attack on UK, France, and Germany foiled. This article comes from the Wednesday, September 29th edition of the London Guardian, and it's written by Richard Norton Taylor and Owen Bowcott. A plot to launch commando-style attacks on Britain, France, and Germany has been intercepted and foiled by drone attacks on militants based in Pakistan, security and intelligence sources said last night. The plan for suicidal onslaughts, similar to the 2008 atrocity in Mumbai, where 166 people were killed in a series of gun and grenade assaults, was disrupted after a combined operation involving US, UK, French, and German intelligence agencies, officials said. British security and intelligence sources, who have been concerned for some time about the possibility of a Mumbai-style attack in Europe, confirmed that they believed a plot was being hatched from Pakistan. The increased rate of coordinated U.S. drone raids along the border with Afghanistan is believed to be a response to intelligence gathered about the plot. Security sources insisted that attacks in Europe were not imminent. The Eiffel Tower in Paris, however, has been evacuated twice because of a bomb scare in the past 2 weeks, a precaution that may have been prompted by the intelligence. No further evidence of such a plot was provided. Jonathan Evans, the head of MI5, earlier this month spoke publicly about the continuing threat of terror attacks in the UK. In his speech, he suggested that around 50% of the plots identified had links to Pakistan, a decline on previous estimates that suggested the figure was nearer 75%. The terror group behind the 2008 Mumbai attacks was the outlaw Pakistani-based Lashkar-e-Taiba. In the aftermath of the attack, Western intelligence agencies gained access to computers seized from the Islamist group, which listed other potential targets outside the Indian subcontinent for commando-style terror strikes. 9 of the gunmen were killed, but a lone survivor gave Indian investigators a full confession that the assault was planned in Pakistan by Lashkar, a militant group that originally began an armed campaign against the Indian Army in Kashmir. U.S. military briefings suggested the latest missile attacks in Pakistan had been coordinated by the CIA and were an unusual example of using drones to preempt possible terror plots. There are some pretty notable threat streams, one U.S. military official told the Wall Street Journal, adding that the significance of the threat is still being assessed by counterterrorism experts. The CIA is believed to have launched at least 20 drone strikes this month in Pakistan's federally administered tribal areas, the region bordering Afghanistan. That is the highest monthly total in the past 6 years, according to figures from the New America Foundation think tank, which monitors drone operations. 4 people were reported killed in the last raid on Monday by U.S. unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, that are operated remotely out of Air Force bases in the U.S. A senior al-Qaeda leader was among one of those killed in drone raids, Pakistani and U.S. officials said yesterday. There has also been speculation that some of the attacks may be targeted against the Islamist Haqqani network, a group that has not previously operated outside the region. The group controls the area in northwestern Pakistan where intelligence officials suspect Osama bin Laden may be hiding. American officials declined to comment on specific plots in Europe or elsewhere, but acknowledged that targeted drone strikes in Pakistan were meant to disrupt militant networks planning attacks. It shouldn't surprise anyone that links between plots and those who are orchestrating them lead to decisive American action, a U.S. official told Reuters. The terrorists who are involved are, as everyone should expect, going to be targets. That's the point of all of this. And that article was titled Mumbai-Style Terror Attack on UK, France, and Germany Foiled. It was published in the Wednesday, September 29th edition of the London Guardian, and it was written by Richard Norton Taylor and Owen Bocott.